She chose a rich man over her family, left me alone with 2 kids. I built a life without her, then she asked to come back, but some doors close forever before we begin. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel. She sat across from me at our kitchen table, the same scratched wooden table where we'd shared years of dinners, school projects, and late-night talks, and said calmly but firmly that she wanted a divorce. She said she wanted a new kind of life, a better one, a richer one. At the time, I thought those words would be the worst part of the whole thing. I was wrong. The real pain came later, when I watched how fast she began acting like our children were solely my responsibility. As if they were a side project she could step away from instead of the life we'd built together. My name is Ruben, and this is the story of how my wife walked away chasing what she called the rich life, vanished for 2 years, and then returned expecting me to abandon everything, including the woman who stood by me so she could reclaim her place. By then, though, I'd learned a truth she never did. Love isn't measured in rooftop photos or luxury tags. Love is being awake at 3 in the morning when your child is burning with fever. To understand how everything fell apart, I need to take you back to the time when things felt normal, or at least when I believed they were. Looking back now, I can clearly see the fractures forming long before everything broke. We didn't live extravagantly, but we were steady. I worked as an operations manager for a logistics company. The pay wasn't impressive, but it was dependable. Benefits were solid, bills were paid. Elena worked part-time at a dental clinic, managing schedules and coordinating patients. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a peaceful area where kids played outside and neighbors actually spoke to one another. It wasn't a dream home, but it was filled with life. Max's soccer trophies lined the shelves. Lily's artwork covered the refrigerator so completely you could barely see the door. On weekends, I'd make pancakes while the kids argued over cartoons. Elena would wander in, still half asleep, stealing bites from their plates and laughing. Those moments felt whole, though I didn't realize how precious they were until they disappeared. Our days followed familiar patterns. Homework spread across the kitchen table while I helped Max struggle through math problems. Elena would sit beside Lily, carefully braiding her hair for school. Movie nights meant blankets, popcorn, and all 4 of us squeezed onto the couch. Sundays were for cleaning, music turned up loud, dancing badly while vacuuming. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't magazine-worthy, but it was real, and I honestly believed we were happy. Somewhere along the way, Elena started comparing our life to a standard I didn't even know we were being judged by. The shift was subtle at first. She'd come back from meeting friends and suddenly our apartment felt cramped to her. Our car seemed outdated. Our annual lake vacation, something the kids loved, started sounding small compared to trips her friends talked about. Her social circle had changed over the year, mostly women from the gym and her workplace. Most of them were involved with men who worked in finance or owned businesses. Men who took spontaneous trips and posted photos from Miami on a random Wednesday. Elena began spending more time scrolling through social media, liking photos of designer bags and expensive dinners that cost more than our weekly groceries. I'd catch her staring at her phone, her expression distant, like she'd just realized she'd been living in grayscale while everyone else had color. She never directly said she loved me less. Instead, she'd mention how Sarah's boyfriend surprised her with a weekend in Napa, or how Jessica just got a new luxury SUV. I'd try to joke about how we were rich in other ways, but the humor stopped landing. She wasn't laughing anymore. The moment everything cracked happened on an ordinary evening. I was sitting at the small desk in the living room reviewing our budget spreadsheet, planning, saving, calculating school costs, insurance, and our goal of eventually buying a place of our own. Elena sat on the couch scrolling endlessly, the familiar swipe sounds filling the room. The glow from her screen lit her face, full of curated images of wealth and effortlessness. Suddenly she snapped, not yelling but overflowing. She said this was all our life amounted to: bills, spreadsheets, routine, nothing exciting. I looked up confused because we'd taken the kids to an amusement park just weeks earlier. They'd been thrilled. Apparently that didn't matter. She talked about how her friends were really living. About trips, gifts, spontaneity, about partners who made things happen instead of just keeping things stable. That's when it hit me, she wasn't talking about love anymore. She was talking about value, about what she believed she'd missed out on. I asked her what she wanted, what would make her happy. She stared at me distant and said she didn't know, only that this life wasn't enough. The weeks that followed were suffocatingly quiet, no shouting, no dramatic fights. Just 2 people existing in the same space while drifting further apart. The kids noticed. Max asked why his mom was always on her phone. I didn't know how to answer. One night after the kids were asleep, she told me plainly that she wanted a divorce. She said she needed to see what else life had to offer, that she felt she'd settled too young. I could have begged, could have promised change, but something inside me went numb. You can't compete with a fantasy, you can't win against an algorithm, so I agreed. Calmly, we talked logistics. Custody, stability for the kids. My lack of emotion shocked her. She'd expected desperation. Instead, I was focused on protecting Max and Lily. She moved out within a month. Custody started evenly, then slowly shifted as her plans took priority. Trips, dinners, events. The kids came home confused, talking about her tiny apartment and how she was always rushing somewhere. I kept records, missed pickups, canceled days, broken promises. The divorce finalized quickly. She didn't want savings or property, she wanted freedom. I kept what mattered, my children and their sense of safety. After that, it somehow got harder, watching her online persona transform, expensive meals, hidden faces. Motivational captions about abundance, while my kids asked why their mom stopped coming to games. I wasn't grieving her anymore, I was grieving what she chose to abandon. And all I could do was keep showing up, night after night, building stability from the wreckage she left behind. The first time Lily asked when her mom was coming back, I answered carefully. I told her that mommy lived somewhere else now, that we'd see her on certain days, and that everything would be okay. But 3 months later, when she asked again, her voice was small and cracked in a way that didn't belong to a child. That's when I realized she wasn't asking about schedules or weekends. She was asking whether our family would ever be complete again. I told her I needed a minute, went into the bathroom, sat on the edge of the tub, and cried silently so my kids wouldn't hear their dad falling apart. Those first 6 months after Elena left were the most brutal stretch of my life, not because I longed for her. I didn't, but because I had to become everything for Max and Lily, while pretending I knew exactly what I was doing. Some nights I'd bring them home, tuck them in, and then sit alone in the quiet apartment wondering how I was supposed to survive doing this by myself for the next decade. I stopped looking at Elena's social media after the first month. It felt like watching someone impersonate the woman I used to know. Rooftop bars, high-end hotels. Captions about self-worth and choosing happiness. Friends would casually mention seeing her with new men, always finance guys. Always real estate types, men who looked like they'd never packed a school lunch or helped a kid study for a spelling test in their lives. Her time with the kids became unreliable. Some weekends she'd take them and bring them back late Sunday night overstimulated and exhausted after sugar-filled brunches and overpriced outings. Other times she'd cancel at the last minute with vague explanations about work obligations or not feeling well. I'd be left soothing two disappointed kids who couldn't understand why their mom's exciting new life seemed to have no space for them. Max started having trouble at school. I got called in after he got into a fight. That night when I asked him what happened, he said the other kid lived with both his parents, and he got angry because he missed that. Something inside me cracked in a place I didn't know was still intact. Lily began gripping her stuffed rabbit whenever her mom came up in conversation. She didn't even realize she was doing it. I did. I'd watch her small fingers tighten around it while she smiled and said she was fine, and I wondered what emotional scars this would leave behind. What therapy sessions awaited her years down the road because of all this. My days blurred into one exhausting routine. Wake up at 6, make breakfast, pack lunches, school drop-offs, full workdays filled with emails from teachers or calls from the nurse, pickups, homework. Dinner, baths, bedtime, then collapse on the couch around 9, too tired to think, only to do it all again the next morning. I stopped going out. I didn't have the energy or a babysitter. Dating felt impossible. The idea of explaining my life to someone new sounded exhausting. Everything I did revolved around keeping my kids fed, safe, and emotionally steady. My brother called me once and said I sounded mechanical, told me I needed to care for myself too. I didn't know how to explain that there was nothing left for me. Every ounce of energy went into making sure Max and Lily felt loved after their mother walked away chasing validation and luxury. About a year in, word started filtering back to me that Elena's glamorous life wasn't quite what it looked like online. Rumors of her dating someone who was secretly married. Of bouncing between apartments because she couldn't afford the neighborhoods she wanted to be seen in. Of juggling multiple side jobs just to fund the lifestyle she was showcasing. I didn't feel satisfied hearing any of it. Mostly I felt sad. Sad that she detonated our family for something that was never real. Sad that our children were the ones paying for it. She still showed up occasionally for her weekends, always polished, always composed. She'd take the kids somewhere flashy, a trampoline park, a premium theater. But when they came home, they'd mention how she spent most of the time on her phone. Or how she got irritated when they behaved like normal kids instead of props. Then around month 15, something changed. I was standing at Max's soccer game on a cold Saturday morning. One of those early matches where your breath fogs the air and the coffee tastes awful, but you drink it anyway. I noticed a woman sitting a few rows away, someone I'd seen before but never really noticed. Her name was Vanessa. Her son was on Max's team. After the game, while the kids ran wild, she commented on how insane youth sports schedules were. The way she laughed, natural, unforced, hit me harder than I expected. I realized it had been months since I'd had a real conversation with another adult. We talked more after that, just parent stuff. She mentioned she was divorced too. Her ex had moved states away and barely saw their son. There was a quiet understanding between us, the shared exhaustion of people who showed up no matter what. Vanessa slowly became part of our lives, carpooling to practice. Conversations at the playground she never pushed, never asked invasive questions. She listened when I needed to unload. And more than anything, she was simply easy to be around. One night, about 6 months after we became friends, Lily spiked a high fever. I was scrambling, trying to manage medicine, dinner, homework, panic. Vanessa texted to check in after hearing about it from Max. I admitted I was overwhelmed. 20 minutes later, she was at my door with soup and children's medicine. She helped quietly, didn't make a scene, and left once things stabilized. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in the kitchen realizing I hadn't felt supported like that since before my marriage collapsed. From there, things grew naturally. Vanessa joined us for pizza nights, helped with school projects, played games with the kids. The apartment felt warmer when she was around. The kids lit up in a way that made my chest ache. They were desperate for consistent, positive attention. I was terrified of letting myself feel anything, afraid of hurting the kids again. Afraid she'd leave too, afraid I was just clinging to comfort. But Vanessa was patient, she never rushed me. We didn't even kiss until 8 months in. When we finally talked about being together, it felt intentional, not impulsive. It wasn't falling, it was choosing kindness, reliability. Someone who showed up on boring Tuesday nights not just for photos. The kids adapted quickly. She never tried to replace their mother. She was simply herself, and that made all the difference. She did puzzles with Lily, threw footballs with Max. Soon they talked about her like she was just part of their everyday life. Sometimes I felt guilty for moving forward, while Elena was out there supposedly thriving. But then I'd watch Vanessa patiently help Lily read or listen attentively to Max's stories, and I knew this wasn't about replacing anyone. It was about rebuilding. For the first time in 2 years, life felt manageable, not perfect but steady. I could breathe again. Then one afternoon at work, staring at spreadsheets, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. Somehow I knew exactly who it was before opening it. It said, "We need to talk. I want to come back to the family." My stomach dropped, not because I wanted her back, but because I knew this would threaten everything I'd built. I thought of Vanessa, of the kids, of our fragile peace. And I knew I wouldn't let Elena burn it down again just because she finally realized the grass wasn't greener, just different. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes, neutral ground. I arrived early to steady myself and remind myself why I was there, not to reconcile, but to draw boundaries that should have existed long ago. She walked in looking polished as always, but tired in a way makeup couldn't fully hide. She smiled like we were old friends catching up, not two people whose marriage had imploded because she chose illusion over reality. She didn't even wait for me to finish my coffee. The words came out fast, like she'd practiced them in the mirror. How the past 2 years had changed her, how she'd grown, how she'd finally understood that money and excitement weren't everything. She talked about lessons learned and clarity gained, about realizing that family was what truly mattered. I let her speak. I wanted to hear the full version of how she planned to explain walking away from her children for curated photos and VIP tables. When she finally stopped, she leaned forward and said she wanted to try again, said she wanted to come home. I looked at her sitting across from me and felt nothing. No anger, no resentment. Not even triumph, just a quiet, settled certainty that whatever problem she thought she was bringing to me was no longer mine to fix. I answered calmly. Told her that chance ended the moment she chose a different life over our family. Told her she would always be Max and Lily's mother and I would never stand in the way of that, but whatever existed between her and me was over for good. completely. She stared at me like she hadn't prepared for that outcome, like it never crossed her mind that I might not be waiting. Then shock twisted into accusation. She asked if there was someone else. I didn't lie, I told her yes. There was someone who'd been present for fevers, homework breakdowns, and the ordinary moments she decided didn't matter. Her face flushed with an anger she had no right to feel. She accused me of replacing her. I almost laughed. Instead, I explained that no one had replaced anyone. Vanessa hadn't taken her place, she had simply stepped into the empty space Elena abandoned. She showed up when showing up mattered. That wasn't betrayal, that was reality. That should have ended the conversation. It didn't. Elena shifted tactics and brought up the kids, said they needed their real family back. Said it must be confusing for them to have a stranger pretending to belong. That's when my composure finally cracked, not into yelling but into steel. I told her the kids were doing well. Better than well, they had consistency, routines, and adults who showed up every single day. If she wanted to be more involved, I'd support that, but on a stable schedule, not whenever it suited her. She didn't like that. She started talking about her rights, about lawyers, about fighting for custody. I unlocked my phone and showed her the record I'd kept. Every missed pickup, every canceled weekend, every last-minute excuse that forced me to rearrange our lives. I watched the color drain from her face as she realized I hadn't been guessing, I'd been documenting. In the months that followed, she did exactly what I feared. She tried to purchase forgiveness. Expensive gifts, big promises, a gaming system for Max, Disneyland plans for Lily that I knew she couldn't afford. The kids came home overloaded with toys and sugar, completely off schedule. Bedtimes ignored, homework skipped. I spent the first half of every week restoring order. Max's teacher emailed me about missing assignments. When I asked him why, he said his mom told him homework could wait because they were having special time. I bit my tongue so hard it hurt. The moment everything finally broke came on an ordinary afternoon, about 4 months after she resurfaced. Vanessa was at our place helping Lily practice spelling while I cooked dinner. Max sat on the floor building quietly, completely at peace. Then there was a knock at the door. Elena stood there unannounced. It wasn't her day, she wanted to take the kids to an event downtown. When she stepped inside and saw Vanessa at the table with Lily, she froze. I saw the anger rising before she spoke. Then Lily's sweet, unaware Lily looked up and said, "Thanks, Mommy," because she'd gotten stuck on a word and Vanessa had helped her. The room went ice cold. Elena exploded, accusations, shouting. How dare I let another woman confuse her children? Vanessa quietly excused herself and left. I guided the kids into their room so they wouldn't hear what came next. Once they were gone, I finally said everything I'd held back. I told Elena she couldn't disappear for years and expect to walk back in unchanged. That Vanessa earned their trust by being present in the unglamorous moments Elena avoided. That love isn't gifts or grand outings, it's weekday dinners, homework battles, and bedtime routines. You don't erase absence with presence. She looked at me like honesty was cruelty. After that, she crossed a line I didn't think she would. She told the kids they weren't allowed to talk about Vanessa around her, said it hurt her feelings. Suddenly, Max and Lily were censoring themselves, splitting their lives in two to protect their mother's emotions. They grew quieter with her, more distant, even as she tried harder with material things. She still tells her version of the story, the one where I turned the kids against her. Where Vanessa stole her family, never the one where she chose to leave and couldn't live with the consequences. Now, years later, Max and Lily are in middle school. They live with me and Vanessa. They see their mother every other weekend when plans are confirmed. They're good kids, resilient kids, but they aren't close to Elena the way she wants. She still posts online about being a devoted mother, still talks about how unfair everything is, still believes something was taken from her instead of understanding she gave it away. People leave marriages all the time. Sometimes that's the right call. That isn't the frightening part. What's frightening is that she still doesn't understand why she couldn't just come back and press rewind. Still doesn't grasp that love and family aren't things you pause while you explore other options. I think she'll spend the rest of her life angry about a loss she created herself, blaming everyone except the person who chose to walk away. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments, leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.